Welcome to Short Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion. This poetry discussion will come to us from Emily Dickinson, but here, this poetry discussion will take place in two separate playlists here on the channel. The first being, obviously, the Poetry Discussions playlist, which we're going to be hitting 100 poetry discussions sometime soon. But second, we're going to have a playlist here on the channel for the National Poetry Month 2021. We're doing a poetry discussion every day of the month here in April 2021. Mondays are for Langston Hughes, Tuesdays are for Sylvia Plath, Wednesdays are for Charles Bukowski, Thursdays are for Emily Dickinson, Friday are for Charles Bukowski, and Saturdays are for Robert Frost, with Sundays providing sort of a catch-all day to do some different poems that I would just sort of like to discuss. So that is what the month is going to look like. And what the month thus far has looked like here on the channel. And today's poem is sort of fitting. Here we are in the month of April, coming out of winter, but here in April 2021, we're sort of coming out of a winter that has lasted 2 years, a year and a half. Here in Kansas City, the winter of 2019 started really early, and it was cold early in October, late in September. Then we had the COVID lockdown, basically prolonging winter for an entire year. Then we went into another winter. So we're coming out, it's been winter as long as I can remember. And that's part of what I want to discuss here. Because the poem I'll just read the poem here. And then I want to talk about something surrounding this poem. In this, the complete poems of Emily Dickinson. So if you don't know, the complete poems of Emily Dickinson are arranged in what is thought to be chronological order. So as the poems were found, they were sort of organized in what they were believed to be first through last written. And here's the poem that I'm going to discuss. It starts on page 572 and ends on page 573. It is poem number 1320. Of course, Emily Dickinson's poems are known by their first lines because she did not title them. This is Dear March, Come In. Dear March, come in. How glad I am. I hoped for you before. Put down your hat, you must have walked. How out of breath you are. Dear March, how are you? And the rest. Did you leave nature well? Oh, March, come right up the stairs with me. I have so much to tell. I got your letter and the birds. The maples never knew that you were coming till I called. I declare how red their faces grew. But March, forgive me. And all the hills you left for me to hew. There was no purple suitable, you took it all with you. Who knocks? That April. Lock the door, I will not be pursued. He stayed away a year to call when I am occupied. But trifles look so trivial as soon as you have come. That blame is just as dear as praise, and praise as mere as blame. Now, nature and even the time of year is not all that rare in Emily Dickinson, not all that rare to Emily Dickinson. But specific mentions of months happen. They do. They happen. And events, Christmas, Valentine's Day, these things happen as well. But this is so particular. March, come in, please. I have so much to tell you. Come in, March, March. March. Now, the reason this poem caught my eye when I was looking at it, when I was looking for a poem, just sort of leafing through Emily Dickinson, this is the poem, or the kissing pages directly before said poem. I know, you can't read them. Just keep that image in mind. And here is 2 pages before. And here is 3 pages before. And it goes on like that. 5 lines, 4 lines, maybe 8 lines. It goes on until the previous year. What this looks like to me, and mind you, we're talking about a tome. We're talking about a brick of poems this big. There's this many of them. There are 1,775 poems in Emily Dickinson. 1,775 pages and pages and pages of 4-line poems. 5 lines here, 8 right over there. What this looks like to me is writer's block. What this looks like to me is perhaps a touch of seasonal depression. What this looks like to me is perhaps a stirless nature being worked up in someone who was quite reclusive. I think that this is something that we can look to today. Emily Dickinson, it seems, in this poem, through the expression of this poem, had been lost in her own head, talking herself out of writing her gorgeous verses for months. And it was March. We don't have we have a year on this poem, but we don't have a month. We're left to assume that this is either being written in February in anticipation of March, or in March as a celebration of, perhaps, winter breaking. Now, in the Northeast, winters last a little bit longer, right? So it need not be the first 70-degree day. Maybe it was just the first time in quite a while that the sun was seen. It seems, and again, I'm not trying to diagnose, I'm not trying to play Sigmund Freud, I'm not trying to say, hey, on the couch, none of this. But I have to admit that, look, I don't really believe in having idols. I don't really believe in looking up to people all that much. There's really 2 people in my literary world that I revere in this way: Emily Dickinson and Ernest Hemingway. Obviously, Papa had some struggles. You don't believe me, look at the way he went out, right? And it would be easy to say, looking at the life that Emily Dickinson purportedly had lived, yeah, she had some issues, right? It would be easy to say that. It's easy to read her words and understand that this was a tortured soul, a soul who was tortured in the realist sense. I mean, the depths of this mind, the mind of Emily Dickinson, are unrivaled. I mean, well, unsurpassed. I can't say unrivaled. Unsurpassed. I can't think of anyone who, with greater ease, could convince me of so many things with just a few words. To know that this individual, or to guess, to surmise, that this individual is suffering with things such as seasonal depression, such as maybe just in general depression, things such as writer's block. To think that Emily Dickinson had possibly convinced herself that she couldn't write. Now again, I'm going to quote this again. Emily Dickinson cited publication as the auction of the mind of man. Okay? That could very easily explain why she didn't really submit all that much. Just saying that I don't believe in it. But you could not believe in it and still believe in yourself, right? To see this mind going through, pages of 4-line poems, which, hey, maybe she was tweaking things. Maybe she was working on the craft. Maybe she was experimenting with form. Maybe she was experimenting with this. Maybe she was experimenting with that. But the elation that is shown in this poem for the coming of March, sort of weird, unless you at least entertain the idea that I'm suggesting. And that's it, really. That's it for this poem. I don't really have all that much to say about it in particular, but it in context, that's a pretty big deal to me. So it really helps me out here on the channel. If you liked this video, you go ahead and hit that like button. I will again be doing, look, I've got new videos on the channel Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I've only missed one upload during this entire year. I screwed up, it got overworked, I don't want to talk about it. But I don't plan on missing any more. So Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I have new videos on this channel. Mondays are for poetry, but this month, every day is for poetry, and every day is an upload. I also have new videos, I guess periodically, I should say at this point. I shouldn't tout the fact that it's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when it hasn't been every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but periodically I have new videos on my personal channel where I review movies and whatnot, a link to which can be found in the description below.